Hey, podcast world, here we are at FNO InsureTech this week in Salt Lake City, Utah. What do you think about that, guys?
Pretty awesome. Very cold outside
It's cold.
today.
There's snow on the ground.
Snow everywhere.
We have Matt Fothery, Lee Boyd, and myself, Rob Beller, on the road this week.
Roadshow.
We are now at our first on-site podcast.
The nice folks at Xactware invited us to be here in attendance as the podcast in residence, I'm going to call it. What do you think about that?
I think it's pretty awesome. You know, we're here in the middle of the hallway. We have our podcast booth behind us, and we have some really exciting guests to interview while we're here, including one who is on this podcast right now.
I know. This is not your average Joe.
No. This is a big name in the InsureTech world.
Today we have with us the CEO and president of Xactware, a member of the Verisk family, Mr. Mike Fulton. And Mike is a super smart, super nice,
very calm,
very chilled out guy who did his keynote speech this morning and killed it.
Oh, it was great. It's one of the best keynotes I've seen in a long time. Very well spoken, well rehearsed. It was sensational.
It was sensational. He dominated the room. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, very much. He was able to bring up 3 additional guests to talk about Verisk and Geomni and ISO and the way everybody is working together to really build this technology ecosystem within all of their companies. They talked about just everything from integrations to bots to new technologies that they're coming into. And I really hope today that we'll get a visit with Mike and get his insight on all of those things.
Well, you'll be glad to know that in a matter of seconds, Mike Fulton is going to be our guest on this very podcast, and we'll get to ask him all kinds of questions.
I'm excited.
Let's do it.
So without further ado, our interview with Mike Fulton. Our very special guest right now is Mike Fulton, who is the CEO of Xactware.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Well
Did I get
done.
that right?
Yeah, well done.
President and CEO.
Yes, that'll
Okay.
work too.
Okay, good.
I always say I don't care what you call me, just keep the paychecks coming, right?
Perfect. We also have Matt Fothery, our CEO at 470, and Lee Boyd, of course, my usual partner in crime.
I am here today.
Okay. So we all had the privilege of having you, of witnessing your keynote speech this morning at the opening of the Elevate conference, which was really cool. And I have to start by saying you were very calm and composed.
Thank you.
I was very impressed.
Good.
I'm
glad.
How did you do that?
Well, I tell people we've got a great team here that preps everything, gets it set up so that I, for the most part, just have to show up and read from the teleprompter. But the idea is just practicing. I've written the speech with a co-writer. I go over it word by word multiple times and then rehearse it several times to make sure that it all comes off well. The key is really, and it's a little bit of an X factor when you've got other people coming up on stage to present with you, you've got to get it done within an hour. And that's a challenge. And luckily, I was sitting over at the side when we had some of the other presenters up thinking, oh my gosh, I've got 10 minutes to really wrap this thing up. But I was happy to see that I was walking off the stage right at 9 a.m. So it was positive.
I think you did it to like the minute.
Yeah,
Luckily.
right to the minute. That was a good job. Good
Right.
job on
It's
that one.
very much.
It's one thing if you're doing it yourself, but you had I think 3 people
And
come up.
3 others.
Yeah. So good job.
Thanks very much.
Yeah.
It was fun.
You were the most relaxed.
Well, I appreciate it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So let's talk about some high points from the speech today.
Yeah, so not everybody who is listening to our podcast was able to make it today. But, why don't you walk us through a little bit of the keynote? What were some of the things that you announced today or actually discussed?
Great question. And one of the big focuses for Verisk is our parent company. We were acquired back in 2008. But one of the big focuses for us and the insurance industry as a whole is greater automation, greater efficiency throughout the claims process. So we are trying to implement that in a number of ways. We talked about terms such as low touch, no touch, high touch from a claims perspective. Most of those are pretty self-explanatory and people understand that. We talked about how we're shifting that message over to what we call the right touch claims, which effectively just means, applying varying degrees of automation throughout the claims process based upon, the policyholder's demographic, how old are they, how are they willing to embrace technology, or what's their reluctance to it. Versus what's their schedule like? Can they actually meet somebody on site? Versus, some of the complexities of the claim. And moving towards that, I think, is the direction that they want to take from an insurance carrier perspective. But it's really not unlike I liken it to the driverless car analogy. They want to have automation, but they're not quite ready to take their hands off the steering wheel yet.
Yeah, can you trust that far? Does it really work?
Right. Well, think of yourself. If someone had come to you 5 years ago and said, "Hey, I've got this driverless car. Do you want it?" You're thinking, maybe I want to see somebody else use it. So what they've done over the last 5 years, now you've got lane assist, you've got self-parking, you've got sensors all over the place, and auto braking and all of those things. So we're becoming more, accepting of that technology, so that now, today, if someone throws a driverless car in front of you, you're probably a little bit more willing to accept it. And that's really the way we've got to handle it from a claims perspective, is to start putting in automation where it makes sense, so that they gradually think they can let their hands off the steering wheel.
Good point. You covered chatbots today, or chatbots were covered.
Right.
And there was an interesting statistic about the number of people that are comfortable with that, and it's a high number.
Wasn't that interesting?
That was very interesting.
So what was interesting to me, and the stat I mentioned, is that everybody thinks that the millennial generation are the ones that are just, they text everything. My kids are the same way, and they're more willing to talk to a machine. But really, there was about 30% of them that readily admit that they're not real comfortable. And my generation, the baby boomer generation, there's about 30% of us that say we are comfortable. So there's a fair degree of overlap in them. And when we originally started going down this road of talking about right touch, there was a thought that, basically, if we know some of the characteristics of the claim, what's the size, the type, the location, things of that nature, we can try and fit it into one of those buckets, meaning the no touch, the low touch, the high touch. It just doesn't work that way. You've got to offer it up to the policyholder, see what direction they want to take it, and just follow them really with it.
It's all about the customer being number one. They have to make that choice and feel like they are. And if they're accepting of that, then they're going to get that high-touch claim no matter what path it goes down, right? And that's the overall philosophy of the right touch, right, is they feel like they've been in control of the process.
Yep, from the customer's perspective, it's a high touch, regardless of whatever path you put them on.
Good point.
We use those terms, no touch, but I don't think any... The chatbot video that we showed, a guy that was completely settling a very high-frequency, low-severity fence claim, never spoke to a human throughout the process, but he probably felt like he had a very high touch in his claims process.
I thought it was really interesting. You talked about the study showing how people were more willing to give more information to a chatbot whenever they thought they were talking to just a bot.
A machine versus a human.
Isn't that strange?
Right.
That was really
the therapist.
interesting. Yeah.
The therapist.
It was a therapist for mental health patients.
That
was really
My wife is a
weird
therapist.
stat.
She's not going to like to hear this.
But no, that, and it really opened my eyes. I'm thinking, well, everybody's going to give more information to a human, where there's stats out there showing that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah.
People are maybe going to be more honest, or maybe going to be able to give more information, if they feel like they're talking to a chatbot.
And it remains to be seen, obviously. There's a limited amount of data that you can research on the subject right now, but it's interesting.
Yeah.
I don't think we don't know what we don't know at this point.
Another thing that was talked about today, we were talking earlier, was say hi to Vi, right? Why don't you tell our listeners What does that mean? What is that? Say hi to Vi.
So as we at Verisk have started going down this road of automated artificial intelligence, we wanted to be able to, because this technology is going to be employed in so many different products, we wanted to be able to put some kind of a stamp on it that would kind of bring it home and have some consistency for users. So we've said that let's call it Verisk Automated Intelligence or Verisk Artificial Intelligence, which the acronym is just VAI, V-A-I. And therefore, we can then start putting that stamp on products in different areas, and people can see as they're using what has been typically a conventional product like Xactimate, where there might be some artificial intelligence being employed to it or within it. They could click on the link, provide some additional information. So it's just a way for us to try and put some consistency and bring all of that together within the suite of products.
You talked today about the importance of the information and data, and I would guess that Verisk, partnership and what they bring to the table really brings it all into perspective now, right? Can you talk a little bit about that, what that has given you on the AI front and how that's accelerated you really through this process?
Absolutely. And I think that because of all of the things we do, from the underwriting side to the claims side, our claim search database, if you're not familiar with that, it's a contributory database, I think 1.3 billion records in it, being used by 90% of the P&C insurance industry in the United States. And for those out there listening that don't understand what it is, it's a way that really tracks every carrier contributes claim information to it, so that if someone submits a claim to me as an insurer, I can push out a request to the claim search database for what's called an echo report. So it just basically says if this is a claim by Mike and he's had a claim at 1212 Main Street at his home, the system will return information that says, well, Mike has had all of these claims that have been reported, and there's been these many claims at 1212 Main Street, even though Mike may not have lived there. It's just a way to potentially detect and prevent fraud. But having all of that data together really, I think, gives us an opportunity, probably more so than anybody else in the industry, to start pulling it all together and do the artificial intelligence. Data is really what it takes to drive that system. The one challenge, frankly, that we have, we've been in business for a long time. We've got a lot of great customers, legacy contracts, and our ability to really leverage that data amongst and share it and aggregate it is somewhat limited. We're contractually obligated to not. And so we're trying to create a mind shift within the industry. So not unlike the medical industry, you go visit your doctor if you've got the flu, I don't want him sharing my name, that I've got some kind of contagion,
but the case information is fine.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. But if he needs to pass some high level information along so that other health professionals can prepare and plan for it, I would liken it to that. And that's really what we're trying to do. But nonetheless, it's a kind of a mind shift on the side of the insurer with regard to the ability to use that data. A little bit of a mind shift on the part of the consumer, who's got to be more willing to be more open and use the technology. And I think we're seeing all those things. It's just not going to happen overnight.
There was something that GM or the auto industry is contributing data about trips and what was that?
So if you've heard the acronym,
same idea, right?
IoT, the Internet of Things, and telematics. Cars have got sensors all on them. We're familiar with GM's OnStar and things of that nature. And the auto industry is trying to move to the point, because they're trying to move to the point where, should you have an accident, OnStar doesn't just contact you and say, are you okay? Do you need an ambulance? Do you need a tow truck? But now they're saying, can we put you in touch with your insurer? Wow. And many people are very open about that. The auto industry, the manufacturers, their motive is to sell OEM parts. So I want you to go to a body shop. I don't want you to buy aftermarket parts. I want you to buy my stuff. But from the consumer's perspective, you're getting a very high degree of customer service. That's moving along a little bit more quickly. We started up a data exchange amongst automotive companies where they're providing that data to us. And you saw the stats within the presentation. I'm sorry, I can't quote them now, but billions of trips and billions of miles that have been captured already. It's amazing, the type of data. But they've got a little better control because you've got Ford, GM, Honda, whatever. They know all the parts that are in their car. They've got control over the sensors and the communication. On the property side, you've got IoT for your thermostat, for your fridge, and other things, but none of it's all tied together through a single manufacturer. But ultimately, we would like to be able to get to the point where we could provide that same level of type of aggregation and service to the policyholder, so that not only you could control your home from a smart home or from a smart app, but be able to manage the risk as well. And I mean, we've seen the smart water devices that if Mike's on vacation and it senses water flowing through the main, shut her down, you know, and that's the direction that we're heading. But from a claims perspective, I mean, we've got a lot of professionals here that make a good living, including us, on servicing claims. You've got to be sensitive to that, because we're talking about minimizing and reducing the number of claims, and it's all about service. There's a changing model, I think, that's going to happen across the industry to really service this.
I have a quick question for you. This is a little off topic, but we're independent insurance adjusters,
yes,
and we've been in the industry for a long time. We've done a lot of business with your company through the years. I'm sure I speak for everybody at the table. We consider you a valuable partner.
Absolutely.
How do you respond to people in the industry who say, "Wow, what's going to happen to our business with all this automation?"
Yeah, that is a great question. It's actually one with our expert panel that I put forth as probably the most important question to all of us. From an automation perspective, what most insurers are really interested in today in automating are the very high frequency, low severity type of losses.
Correct.
So the fence claim, the thing that they would just otherwise do once and done. So ideally, it might be things that you may not address anyway. But I think it's going to gradually move into more complex claims. I think it's going to change your industry. The extent to which it is, I don't know. And I think the balance that we've got to strike is that, how you do business on a day-to-day basis is one thing. But when you have, Hurricane Harvey come into Houston, how are you going to be able to scale up to address that? And that's the balance that I think there has to be some real open discussion, open dialogue within the industry to make sure that you're able to service them the extent to which they need on the day-to-day business, but can also ramp that up when needed in the high catastrophe areas.
And one of the things we're seeing, and Matt and Lee can speak to this a lot more than I, but that a lot of the carriers that we work for, they don't want the highly unskilled, if I can say that, untrained, unsophisticated inspector necessarily going out to the claim. They want somebody who's insurance savvy, who understands what a loss is.
Yeah, and I think it's even more impactful that they understand how to handle the customer and the customer service still, because there's still this learning curve with everything that's coming, that we still understand how the insurance claim works and can walk them through as all this technology is emerging. But it's still different. I mean, as some of the bots come up, it's changing the way we even explain the claim, as you know.
It is. And, I look at it as really the greater good, right? Yes, things will change. Businesses will change. Businesses will be forced to evolve and become maybe what they aren't today. They may have to be something different. But there is the greater good. There's the whole world of customer expectation that we have to meet as an insurance industry, right? And so we have to be able to evolve and change with these times. So if it is using chatbots, if it is using new AI technologies to get these claims settled, that's just a fact of life. If we don't evolve with it, then you're going to die out. Period.
Right.
I think what you'll find, and this is just my own sense, is that what insurers are dealing with, you've got the top 5, top 10, maybe even top 20 insurers that employ a lot of staff adjusters. Right. And they've got kind of an aging demographic there. They're set for retirement. They're not actually getting new folks into that have the construction savvy as well as the insurance savvy. And frankly, one of the interesting things this afternoon, John Ratzenberger's here, and he's started a foundation called Nuts, Bolts, and Thingamajigs. But it's all about teaching the younger generation how to fix things and how to not be afraid to fix things.
Right.
And I don't know if you've noticed this. I spent a lot of time with my son, who's now 21, teaching him how to work on cars and how to put things together, and more importantly, not be afraid to tear something apart and see how to put it back together. But a lot of the younger generation doesn't do that now. Right. But so the big insurers are trying to account for a retiring workforce within their staff. The smaller
Right.
insurers who leverage a lot of IAs, and the bigger ones that use you on the cat situations, I think they're going to need you for a long time. But you're right. I mean, it's a shift in the industry that we all have to understand is coming.
It is. It is coming.
I thought another very interesting statistic is, last year was a huge loss year for the industry. I think you said we were $46 billion in losses. But over the last 3 years, it looks like our average cycle time on a contact to inspect has dropped almost 1.5 days. That's pretty remarkable. And how do you explain that from your perspective to kind of give us some insight? And I think it probably leads back to this technology ecosystem you talked about. Is that what you think is the leading contributor to it?
Well, I mean, I would like to think so, but I think that, a lot of the tools that we're putting in place help people to be able to reach out more quickly to folks. I think some insurers are putting in place more effective tools for reporting first notice of loss. I think from the supply chain side, you guys are being measured more tightly on how quickly you get out there.
No doubt.
And I think all of that is adding to it. But what's really interesting that we really didn't get into, even though it was a record year from a dollar value perspective, it really didn't have quite the number of claims that we had in prior years with like Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and so on. So it's just, inflation is driving the dollar value of claims up, but from a frequency perspective, it might be a little bit less, and so people are able to actually service them a little bit more quickly. But it's still remarkable. Going from 3.5 days to 2.5 days it takes a lot to move the needle that much across the industry.
Over millions, right? Of
Absolutely,
claims.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 3 million cat claims was thrown out. That's a lot of claims to service in a 4.5 day inspection. That's pretty remarkable.
Right.
But given with some of the events we've had this year, hurricanes and wildfires and some of that stuff.
We have. I read. I believe it was in November that Xactware just processed its 100th million claim. Is that right? Congratulations. That's a lot of claims. And with that, that's a lot of people using the systems. And the last 10 minutes of your presentation today was about integrations, right? And you talked about how you were a little taken back by people saying that, Xactware is not a open platform, right? Why don't you talk to us a little bit about that? You gave us some stats. I believe that you're actually integrated with 96. I believe that's right, 96.
Yep.
And go ahead and tell our listeners just a little bit about your philosophy behind that, and kind of where that's going.
Well, the market is certainly changing. We live in a little bit of a different world, and we've always been very open from an integration perspective. I would say that we've always been very cautious and tried to be very controlled with it as well. But, when an insurer sends claim information to us, we're kind of the clearinghouse. We're really the stewards of their data. And so we have to be careful that when it goes out to, even if you think of the three-legged stool between the insurer, Xactware, and whether it's an IA firm or a contractor, all of those three parties have agreements with each other on handling data. So you bring in a fourth party a party that the contractor might want to deal with for workflow management or accounting or things of that nature. That group doesn't have a contract with the insurer, doesn't have a contract with anybody else, and yet we need to make sure, because we have got a responsibility to protect the insurer's data, that they can live up to the same standards.
Right.
So can they meet the security standards that we offer and so on? And so we've been cautious and not closed but controlled. The one thing that we hadn't really done in the past, we've always been really cautious about, is integrating with those that compete with us.
Correct.
Like most.
Sure.
Right, yeah.
Completely understandable.
But the world is changing. I mean, think of Amazon. You go onto Amazon, you can buy products that Amazon sells. You can buy products that others sell as well.
Right.
Amazon entices you to buy their products because they give you Prime and free shipping and all of these other things.
Sure.
That's the model that I think we've got to get to, and I think that's where the industry is heading. So our expanding into that world is going to be along those lines. Still going to be cautious, still going to be controlled, but I'm not going to have that barrier where just because they're a competing solution that we would put up that wall.
Yeah, we interview many InsureTech companies, and it frequently comes up: are you integrated with one platform or another?
Right.
And so I think it's absolutely something you have to address, particularly as more and more and more and more InsureTech solutions come of age and are adopted by your customers. I'm sure your customers are saying to you, "I need their tool to talk to your tool." right? They're probably asking for it.
Yeah, InsureTech is a big buzzword that's going around the industry. And we have within Verisk is a big organization and we offer so many tools. We often end up categorizing or having ourselves categorized outside of the InsureTech space, because InsureTech typically means, well, you've got some VC money and you're taking this little small use case.
Right.
It's easy for someone from one of those organizations to come into an insurer and say, hey, I do this. And they say, great, I can use that. And whereas a Verisk salesman comes in and says, we do everything,
right?
And they just can't get their head around everything that that they might be able to use that for. So we're really trying to change that, because Verisk is really a confederation of a lot of business units that are really InsureTech. Xactware is one. I think we've got investment from Verisk, so we've got the VC money. It's,
exactly.
It's not venture capitalists; it's Verisk corporate that's investing in us to be able to do that. But it's still VC, and that's really what we're trying to do, is just make sure that we can keep up with that industry. But you're exactly right, is that we still, even that being the case, the insurer wants to be able to take care of any type of use case that they need. They don't want to be limited to selecting perhaps a product that Verisk offers today or that Verisk might offer in 6 months. And so we need to be more open about integrating with some of those other solutions.
I think you brought up kind of the Apple use case, and that's a perfect example of a very tight ecosystem that allows integration, but they have a very strict regimented standard for that ecosystem, right? They have a very high standard, and I don't worry about my data within Apple because I know they've got that development in the brand and the security. I think that's what I'm hearing is you want to be the Apple of the insurance industry. You want to you kind of want to take on that reputation, right?
Well, I think like it or not, we're in that world. I mean, we have developed a platform on which everyone lives, frankly. And if they want to work with the insurer, you get it. You guys use Xactimate, and it's a great business model, but with great power comes great responsibility, right? And so we really have to be cautious about that and make sure that we're requiring those same levels of standard with regard to data security as are required of us.
Sure.
I would say as users of your product and then many others, we very much appreciate all of the thought that goes into the integrating with other companies, because as much as we want those integrations, we also need to make sure that we're treating our policyholders and insureds with respect to their data. So we thank you for that, but we also thank you for having an open mind with the future of integrations, because that's what it is, right? Amazon Alexa, Apple, Google. The world is growing, and integrations and data are really where it's at. APIs is the future. So,
right.
Well, Netflix, a big user of AWS.
That's correct.
Right?
Yes.
Correct.
That's correct.
There's competition for you.
Yeah,
right?
and AWS, great service. We're actually migrating to it. I mean, one of the challenges we started, there were the term that was floated around several years ago was kind of public cloud, quote unquote.
Right.
And that using that term was the wrong thing to do, because you just envision that everything's out there in the public.
Right.
When it's really not. It's really no different. I mean, any business today that uses an on-prem server environment is leasing servers, and you've got people coming in and servicing those. And even though they might be in your building or they might be down the street at a data center, it's really no different than utilizing AWS. And the thing that AWS gives you is the ability to scale up and down more quickly when needed.
Very quickly.
That was going to be my question: is why are you choosing them? I mean, they're so amazing in so many of their verticals that they work in. If you can tell us at the 30,000 foot level why you chose to go in that direction.
Why we chose to go Amazon, or just the cloud?
AWS.
Just the reputation that they have. They offer a lot of different services. They provide what we believe is the greatest level of security when it comes to we've got data from obviously multiple carriers. We want to make sure that those are fenced off really properly, and really the scalability of it. And as we go in, a big push of ours is to go beyond North America. And so when you think of GDPR, if you're familiar with that, some pretty strict restrictions with regard to security of data and pretty strict penalties, should data get out into the wild. So going into another country has a great deal of expense if you're going to go in and open up a data center or lease data center space. Right. Whereas you can go and fire up, an AWS service in that region relatively cheaply by comparison for a fraction of the cost, and it has the same level of security that you would otherwise. And it gives you the ability to scale up as customers scale up, whereas doing an on-prem type of data center, you've got a plan for what we call catastrophic success, you know?
Yeah, we have a little bit of experience with that.
Well, you know, this is a fantastic conference. We love it here. You said this is your 10th year.
Glad you guys came.
Yes, it is great, and a little bit under 1,000 attendees. Is that right?
Yeah. So registered, we're over 800.
Wow.
We tend to, and you guys, you know, our home office is just 30 miles down the road. So a big part of our success is getting our employees up here to intermingle with.
Yeah, that's
folks.
great.
We love that part.
Yeah.
At any given time, there's 100 Xactware employees up here
Wow.
mingling around. So attendance, yes, in that room. I think we're pushing 1,000. Registered attendance with regard to clients is, I think we're pushing about 8.25, which is a record.
Wow.
Yeah, well, I've been coming for 5 years now, I guess, and every year it grows. I was telling Rob that, you know, whenever I first came, that room was just all round tables.
Right.
And then they started adding some chairs, and now it's just every year it gets bigger and bigger.
Yeah, it's quite humbling, and it's really great. And I had a comment brought up to me last year at the conference that somebody said, you know, I go to other conferences to party. This is where I come to get business done.
Very good.
You know, I thought that's a great way to put it.
Right.
And I find myself, we can get more business done in this 48-hour period than you really can 6 months otherwise.
Right. What a terrific thing that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, we consider you kind of the number one InsureTech.
Thank you.
That's when we
do.
talk about you, and we think about we
Absolutely.
think of you as absolutely an InsureTech, and so you're cool.
Wonderful.
You're very cool.
We will live up to that.
Okay.
Well, we appreciate you so much stopping by today
I
and
appreciate the
and
time.
visiting with us.
Thanks, guys. This has been great fun.
This
I
is-
appreciate it. Anytime.
And we have to thank you for letting us do this. I mean,
Right.
it's your company, your people were open to the idea, and good for them, and we appreciate it.
Awesome. This is all about you guys. It's certainly not about us. So
We
thanks very
appreciate
much.
you.
Thank you.
you so much for coming by, Mike.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
Well, what an interesting, smart, nice guy.
Very smart, very well spoken. He didn't disappoint. That was outstanding.
No, I mean, to think about the fact that here we are, he's basically the host of 1,000 people.
Yeah, that kind of blows my mind. I mean, this is his Super Bowl, right?
This is his Super Bowl.
conference,
Right.
and then to carve out, 30, 40 minutes with us to visit and really,
Very generous.
put his game face on it. It was very generous of him.
Yeah, he's such a nice guy, and he's so thoughtful in his answers. Just a lot of great information there. I found it really interesting that he said that a lot of people don't think of them as InsureTech. What did y'all think about that?
Yeah, as we've all talked before, I think they're the number one InsureTech there is. Right?
I would agree. I mean, that's kind of amazing to hear that perspective. But they're absolutely one of the biggest InsureTech out there. We've always considered them that way.
I mean, they might not be 12 guys, in somebody's basement, right, with a bunch of laptops sitting around. Obviously, they're a well-established company. They're very sophisticated. They've been around a long time. But for those of us who've been in this industry a long time, they've been the technology and the innovator.
They are the ones who they set off InsureTech as a whole. Any move that they make sends ripples through the entire industry.
Well, and he covered it in the opening remarks, and he covered it here today. They've got their own ecosystem now.
They do, and
the suite of services they offer is unprecedented. And they have a lot of intelligent people here, and it's just going to keep growing, right? And it's sensational. Great conference.
I was very excited to hear him bring up integration. I understand why they have been very thoughtful in their integration moves. I understand that. I'm very happy that they are thinking more outside the box. He even said on here, it's not out of the realm of possibility that they might integrate with a competitor. That's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that was a pretty interesting comment.
That's a major change for this company.
Absolutely. But I think a very thoughtful one at that.
Yes,
I agree.
Right.
I agree. He made it very, very well known that it's not that we didn't integrate. We've integrated with 96 companies outside of our industry. It's just we were very thoughtful, and in that we were slower to move. We didn't overdo it, but it does sound as though the doors are opening a little wider. Not that they were closed. We want to be clear of that. He was very clear on that, but I do feel like they're wider.
And I think some of that is you have to hand to Mike Fulton, right? He strikes me as somebody who's even-keeled, even-tempered, and has a good sense of his company's position in the marketplace.
I would agree. He has listened to what people want, and as long as the data is right and the security is still there, I think the answer is why not.
Yeah, you have to step back and look at the landscape and see what's going on, and we're at a very interesting time in this industry. There's a lot of noise, a lot of technology out there, and so you have to step back and say what's going to emerge, where can we step next, how does this ecosystem keep developing. So I think it's very smart of him and the company to accelerate with those integrations and really put an emphasis on that.
And from somebody who plays around in this world every day, one thing you have to hand to them is they have a lot of products that work.
They do.
Right? I mean, they're ready to be used today, and I mean that's hard to fight if you're trying to penetrate into this marketplace. I mean, look at claims experience. That's an amazing tool, right?
It is. Rob and I are speaking on claims experience and Geomni and some tools that we can use in the virtual world. So I've been able to really dig deep in my research on claims experience. It's an awesome tool. It has so much possibility. In fact, we were talking to some carriers the other night on how they plan to use it, which was even outside the box of how it was intended. It has great capability.
So you guys are speaking, huh?
We are speaking, Matt.
Can I come?
You are not allowed to be in the room, no.
Man, I knew you were going to say that.
No, because I shudder to think what might happen from the back of the room.
I'll be nice, I promise.
Mm-hmm. You going to be in the front row or in the last row?
Where do you want me?
Right outside the room.
Right outside the room. Well, what do y'all think about this conference? What a great place here.
I mean, we're off to a great start. Keynote was great. We've stuck our head in a couple of sessions. I mean, everything's on point, and you guys are coming up after lunch, so I look forward to we got another keynote this afternoon.
We do. John Rassenberger?
I think you said it right.
Did I
That's
pronounce
right.
it correct?
That's congratulations.
Very good.
Yeah, he'll be a great conversation.
Cliff from Cheers.
Mike talked a little bit about what he's going to talk about, so I'm excited about that one. I plan to be on that for sure.
Well, stay with us. We'll have more from Elevate 19, the Xactware conference, and more guests, more information, and more good times.
Thank you, everybody.